Hello, and thank you for joining us. Oh, yeah, we are on. Okay. Hello, and thank you for joining us. This is No Soundbites Allowed, and I am your host, Michael Voss, Dragon of the Southern Tier, and I'm happy to be here with you today. Oh, I hope everyone is having a great day today. It's Sunday. This is January 17th, and we have a lot to talk about. We want to talk about what's splitting America. Why are we separating? We want to talk about what's going to be happening in 3 days as Joe Biden takes over the presidency. What's happening to conservatives, to Republicans, to libertarians, basically even Democrats, anyone who is not in a part of the progressive left movement. The crimes and the censorship coming from the internet overlords. We're going to try and talk about all of that, plus things that matter to you, like the First and Second Amendment. And we thank you all for joining us here on this program. Now, if it is the first time that you're joining us, we do long-form political commentary on this program. And every Sunday, as we are today at 2:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, we talk directly with you about the issues that matter in America. And we invite you to contact us. You're able to reach us on YouTube, on Facebook, on Twitter, to tell us what you're thinking about and what is important to you. And you can also call into the program at 607-242-1582. We're happy to hear your voices, no matter where you are around the world. Our friends in Canada, Mexico, in Great Britain, in Germany, India, Peru, and the rest of South America in particular, where we have some of our guests that I am aware of. So let's get into it today. And hello, everybody. I'm glad to see that. Looks like we're up on YouTube and Facebook at the moment. But the internet overlords, well, we'll see how well they do with that. So let's talk about something. First of all, I've been meaning to mention the problem that we're seeing in America today, I believe, is the problem that we're seeing in Hong Kong. We are going to the same path. Hong Kong is struggling to try and get the same freedoms that we in America are taking for granted every single day, that people in Great Britain are taking advantage of and are taking for granted every day. And in that nation, we're seeing that those who oppose freedom, that's the Chinese government, they're locking everyone up because they're terrorists, because they're bad people, because they can't oppose the government. That's just the way it is. And we're seeing that same kind of momentum here in the United States. And not many people are talking about the battle in Hong Kong, which we have talked about before on this program. And again, we want to mention it because we stand with the people of Hong Kong in their path, in their struggle to have freedom, to have democracy. And it should be mentioned. And I know that, there's a lot of problems going on in East Asia right now. If we look at what's going on with North Korea, Joe Biden really needs to step up because we've seen Kim Jong-un in North Korea stating that he wants to get his military at a higher level. He's firing off nukes in the Indian Ocean to get the attention of the United States. And I'm a little fearful of what he's going to be doing with that because we've already seen Joe Biden solidly backed the Iran nuclear deal where he gave hundreds of millions of dollars to Iran, the world's largest sponsor of terrorism. And it was admitted by then Secretary John Kerry that this would help promote global terrorism. Now, with that kind of pedigree, seeing Joe Biden step in, someone that many of the leaders of the world do not fear, I have to worry about whether or not we're going to see him make a similar type of deal, paying millions, billions of dollars to North Korea in an effort to appease them and therefore promote even more terrorism, even more conflict throughout the world. It's going to be a problem. But let's go on, because that's not the biggest thing that's on everyone's mind. I think everyone's talking about right now, well, one of the things everyone's talking about right now is the economy. How are we going to get the economy moving forward? What are we going to do to move the economy forward? Are we going to give everyone $1,400 checks or $2,000 checks? Or are we going to pay people every day and every month forever? And this is some of the things that Bernie Sanders, as the budget chair of the Senate Senate Budget Committee, is looking to do. He wants to make sure that we are paying people money every single day or every month. And one of his most recent ideas is to give everyone a $2,000 monthly stimulus check. I don't know if a lot of people have heard about this, and this is coming from Newsweek, where they're mentioning, as of yesterday, that there is now a push for $2,000 monthly stimulus checks, and 65% of America supports it, which isn't exactly correct. Once again, the headline isn't really telling the story here. They're not really telling people the truth. Now, we do know that Joe Biden has already offered a $1.9 trillion relief package, COVID relief package. That's going to pay $1,400 in checks to everyone, kicks the can down the road on the issue of evictions. So evictions will go from February 1st to October 1st. Doesn't resolve the problem. 12.8 million people at least still have a problem. The $1,400 does not fix that problem, which is over $5,400 per person on average, but it just moves it down. And essentially that's the plan. We're just going to kick it down the road. But we've heard from members like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, Bernie Sanders, and Senator Ed Markey of Massachusetts. They're now coming up with this idea that, well, we're just going to keep paying people money. We're going to pay them $2,000 a month in checks. Are you out of your mind? That's $3 trillion. To give you some perspective on this, the United States government spends every year about $4.1 trillion. We take in taxes about $3.4 trillion. That's, a deficit of about $1.2 trillion per year on average. And they're talking about doubling that. That we're going to double the amount of money that we're going to spend. Wildman mentions, world government is upon us, run, run, run. Yeah, it is. And this is part of that problem. We're bankrupting the nation at a rate that is insane. We're talking about, if this goes forward, if Joe Biden passes the $2 trillion relief package, and we see the $3 trillion monthly payments that Markey and Bernie Sanders and Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and Andrew Yang support, then we're talking about destroying the economy. We're talking about inflation like no one has ever seen before. We're going to make the stagflation under President Jimmy Carter look stupid. We're talking about not just a recession, but a depression. I mean, imagine how much money it's going to cost for the food that you want to put on your plate when the cost of everything has gone up. And because there's $6 trillion, that would, just these two plans alone, what Joe Biden has proposed and what Senator Ed Markey is proposing, we're talking about, that's $4.9 trillion, let's call it $5 trillion on top of the $4 trillion it takes to run the government. That's $9 trillion. Now, sounds like a huge number. What that means is the dollar is worth about half as much, which means everything that you buy is going to cost about twice as much. This is before taking into account the taxes that are going to go along with that to try and pay for all this. Can you imagine that, a gallon of milk is going to cost you somewhere around $6 a gallon? Let me ask you, when you have to pay $5 for a dozen eggs, does that seem like you're doing better or worse? Will that be helping you or will that be hurting you? Especially for those who are lower income. I mean, let's think this through because our elected leaders absolutely aren't. Jim Derringer mentions there are people fully aware that they can nuke the economy and America's place in the world. Those individuals are traitors to the people and to the legacy of the nation. You mentioned an interesting word there, Jim. traitors. And I'm going to get into that because I think we have to. Because in 3 days, actually right this second, since January 6th, the question of who's a traitor, who is an insurgent, who is an American citizen, and what is an American citizen is a big question. And it is a question that has not been resolved at all. But I also want to address some of these other issues that we just aren't hearing about in the news media, that no one's talking about, and I think need to be talked about because they're important issues. And I think it adds to this question of, is America separating? Why are we splitting America apart? How is this happening? And I think this is important. By the way, for anyone who's never been here before, the links to everything I'm speaking about will be in the description on YouTube after the show so that you can see it in full context for yourself to make your own decisions. But I think this is important to talk about, and I think it's important to understand. And it's not limited to this. Because, Jim, I think you have a lot of value to what you're saying, but I want to make sure we get a clear understanding of how big the problem is. Because at the moment, as you mentioned about traitors, well, there's PBS. PBS, their principal counsel, Michael Beller, had been advocating to put children into re-education camps. This is Sesame Street. This is the public broadcasting system. These guys are electric company. They're there for child programs. And he's talking about programming children into a certain political ideology. And up until we became aware of this, which was on last week, suddenly, immediately after finding that out, as it became public, PBS fired him, saying, oh, we have nothing to do with this. The damage is already done. The damage is already done. How many other people in PBS also share this same far left ideology that says that we have to reprogram people? And if you think I'm kidding about reprogramming, I am absolutely not. This is Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez herself saying these things very vocally. As we can see in Reason.com, talking about the government. No, it's not the government's job to rein in the internet overlords. But she's also talking about, she wants to stop the disinformation and misinformation that's out there. She wants to control what is being said and who is saying it. In the article, the quote is, if government could ban disinformation, after all, it could use that as a cover for banning speech that is not actually false, but merely critical of the government or the specific politicians. Recall that Democrats swiftly denounced the New York Post's report on Hunter Biden's foreign connections as disinformation, even though many of the underlying aspects of the story have since been confirmed. Reason is correct. And I'm going to get to your message, comment in 1 second, Wild Man. But not only is it that we saw what they did with Hunter Biden, but remember, it was Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez herself who went on to 60 Minutes and said, well, the truth isn't as important as her feelings, the morality that she feels. Her morality is more important than the strict truth, the facts, the figures, the literal truth. Well, isn't that disinformation? If you're willing to go with your feelings and your personal beliefs over fact, like say for COVID, say for the economy, in so many things, if you're willing to go by your feelings as being more important than the facts, then is that not misinformation? Should she, by her own description, not be banned? Well, no, because she's in charge. It's people like me who should be banned because I'm actually showing you quotes and we're having a conversation about the facts, which she doesn't particularly like. Those in the Democratic Socialists of America, like those in Ithaca, who are willing to use violence as they did right before the election to try and make a point. But that's okay, because that's not something that's bad in America. That's a good thing. That's a protest. And they should be able to do that. But God forbid anyone even speaks because, well, that's bad for America. Wildman says, the comparison of gas and milk is interesting. Look at the energy output you can get out of a gallon of gas versus gallon of milk. then look at the price of each. Well, actually, if you really want to have a surprise there, wild man, consider what is the cost of a gallon of water. Actually, one of the most expensive things you could possibly buy is a gallon of water. It is astronomical compared to the price of just about anything else. It's ridiculous. Vic Furman says, we're watching you, Mike. You're on the list. I know I'm on the list. I've been on the list for a long time, and I'm surprised they haven't kicked me off of Twitter and Facebook yet, although they've warned me several times, but we'll see. We'll see how far that goes. At the same time, I'm not going to stop speaking. But that's the thing. We want to hear people. I mean, think about it. We have Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez trying to decide what is disinformation and misinformation, and that she wants to have media literacy as a mandate. She wants to have a congressional determination of what is truth and what is reconciliation. Remember, she was the one who said right after the election that we need to have lists of Trump supporters, which is where the Trump Accountability Project appeared. They've since taken off their website, although they still have the list of people who voted for President Trump, who donated to President Trump, people who were in the Trump administration. And it doesn't, to me, it's insane. It's as insane as people like Don Lemon, which I'm going to get to, that they're trying to put together re-education camps. And I'm not kidding about this. Let me make it very clear. This comes from, oddly enough, the New York Post, who I'm sure Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, the Democratic Socialists out there, don't believe is a real newspaper, but it actually is quoting her, that we have to de-radicalize people. The quote is, she's quoted as saying, there are people who are radicalized right now. It's going to take a very long time to de-radicalize these people and a lot of effort. This isn't a problem that's going to go away on January 20th. Wait a minute. Let's think about this. And she wants to double or triple or quadruple the funding for programs to de-radicalize Americans. That is probably the most authoritarian, totalitarian dictatorship speak that I have ever heard. This is the stuff we hear in Cuba. This is the stuff we hear in North Korea. This is what we hear out of China. This is the kind of stuff we've heard from Idi Amin and Pol Pot. This is insane that it's happening in America, that we have an elected official, a member of Congress, that is saying, hey, we have to reprogram Americans, that we have to change the way you think. This is thought police. This is straight out of 1984, which is, by the way, banned in Facebook and on Twitter, as I believe. You can't really post about that. But this is Orwellian type of speaking. Jim mentions Bolshevik parallels happening, no longer just uncanny or coincidental. It's absolutely straight in your face, absolutely fact. I have just quoted her. This is the quote. This is out in the public. She has actively said this. You just saw Reason.com quoting her as well. She is looking to set up tribunals for American citizens, for people who don't believe what she believes, who don't think like she thinks. And if you think it's restricted only to conservatives, to Republicans or libertarians, you better think again. She is a socialist. She is a progressive. She is not a Democrat. Rank and file members of the Democratic Party are just as bad off and are on the same list as I am, as anyone who agrees with me or has any belief in any part of what we're talking about. They're going to be on the list too, because we have wrongthink. We have a way of thinking that they don't believe is correct in history. As Wildman says, we are in the normalization phase. No, we already went through that phase. That's what COVID-19 happened. That's during the COVID-19 lockdowns. We became normalized to this idea that our government is taking more and more power. Look at Governor Newsom, Governor Whitman, Governor Cuomo. Look at the way they've decided. They pick and choose on any given day which business can and cannot open, what hours they can and cannot open, because it's scientific that at 10:01 p.m., all of a sudden, COVID-19 becomes hyperactive. And it is, you absolutely will get COVID in your local grocery store, the little bodega down the block. But if you go to Walmart, where there are thousands of people touching the same exact items every single day, well, that's perfectly fine. You can't get COVID there because, I don't know, Walmart has some kind of barrier that COVID-19 can't get through, but is definitely going to go into your local bodega, into your local restaurant, into your local bar, gym, movie theater, everywhere else. And people believe this. And people are living by this. We're talking about lockdowns again. And guess what? The lockdowns didn't work the first time. And they're not working now. We've restricted ourselves. We've separated ourselves. We don't talk to each other. We've got masks over our faces and we are hiding from each other. And we're restricted in how we can speak to each other on the internet. And this is all because they're protecting us. Our government is protecting us. And people are still getting and dying from COVID, even with a vaccine, which is untested, which is showing itself to be just as much of a problem as the COVID virus, if not more. This is a problem, and we can't talk about it because, oh my God, you said something against COVID-19. You're not a doctor. You don't get to have an opinion about this. Well, you know, Andrew Cuomo isn't a doctor either, and he's making law based on this. Law that makes no sense. Because if you want to tell me that Cuomo is doing the right thing, then explain to me not only why he killed 12,000 people in nursing homes, which he has, but please explain to me why COVID is more active after 10 p.m. than it is before 10 p.m. Please explain that to me. Show me where the science is. Show me one single scientific document that says, oh, yeah, COVID's more active after 10 p.m. Because you can't. So throw out this idea that we're doing anything scientific here. We're not. What we are doing is controlling thought. We're controlling speech. We are throwing the First Amendment out the window at every level of our society, whether that's with the internet overlords, and I do mean Mark Zuckerberg, and Twitter. God, I can't remember his name. The CEO, Jim Dorsey. Yeah, I'm speaking about them. I'm talking about Google. I'm talking about Amazon. They are actively censoring what we can say, what we can think, what information we can access. After decades of teaching us that just read the headline, don't worry about it. And you're watching the news. Don't worry, we're going to cover all the news that's important to you in about 30 seconds, between 30 seconds and a minute and a half. Jim Laden. I like that. Chicken Beat goes Jim Laden. Yeah, Jim Laden. I get it. Jim Laden to play on Bin Laden. But it's really interesting that, that's why this program exists. We need to have conversations. And I'm not asking anyone to agree with anything that I have to say. I'm not asking people to say, oh, this is the way you must think. No, my name is not Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. I am not a member of the Democratic Socialist Party, and I'm not a member of Antifa or any other of these far left groups that demand you must think this way or we will punish you. And we are seeing them come out and punishing people. They are actively doing this. Matter of fact, if you saw our video, and a lot of people didn't, on last Monday, we were talking about how Senator Tammy Duckworth, is actively going out and talking about doing military tribunals against citizens. A lot of people may not have heard about that because Tammy Duckworth wants an investigation from the Pentagon to investigate American citizens, otherwise known as retired military. And when you retire from the military, you're a citizen. And she wants to go out and she wants to have the Pentagon impose military law the UCMJ, Unified Code of Military Justice, on American citizens, not the Constitution, and to punish them. We are watching our government go somewhere I have never imagined would ever go in 52, almost 53 years of my life. And I am terrified. And I would think whether you are a Democrat, a libertarian, a conservative, or Republican, whether you don't have to like politics, follow politics at all. And this should terrify you. This should make you think of the worst aspects of Schindler's List. It should make you think of the worst aspects of the Killing Fields. It should make you think of Tiananmen Square. It should make you think of the Cuban Revolution. It should make you think of Venezuela right this second, where thousands of members of the Venezuelan innocent people are being killed by the Venezuelan government. And I don't mean starvation, which is happening. And I'm not talking about mumps and measles, which is running rampant in that country for the last almost 3 years now. No, I'm talking about the government actually going out and killing people. Jim mentions the seeds for these events were planted decades ago. And I agree. Like I said, it's been decades where we've been taught, just watch the headline. Just listen to our news media, local on to national, talk about this issue for a minute and a half. That's it. Because you can intelligently describe destroying the First Amendment in a minute and a half. I don't think so. You can intelligently describe the impact of giving trillions of dollars, just creating trillions of dollars of debt, and you can intelligently explain how that's going to impact the economy in a minute and a half. You can't. It's this kind of mentality, and then coupling that with, oh, but we are on the right side of history. We're the good guys. And if you disagree, well, you are the bad guy, obviously. And we need to silence you, and we need to re-educate you. That's gulag talk. And as someone who has actually lived in the Soviet Union, who was there during the coup attempt of the RFGC, as they tried to take over for Gorbachev, the hardline communists, and they were threatening and gathering people up to send them to gulags, in particular the foreign nationals like myself and other expatriates that were living in Moscow at the time. The reality of being thrown into a gulag is something I am hyper aware of, and I do realize what that really means, and it starts off and it sounds exactly like this language we are hearing right now. Jim mentions debt which is a majority owned by U.S. banks in the Federal Reserve and several foreign nations, in particular China, but others as well. Yeah. And I know that Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, Andrew Yang, Bernie Sanders, and many others believe, well, you can just spend forever. Debt means nothing. You can just keep spending. I believe earlier in the week, I did a video where I highlighted and showed, yeah, you can have debt forever, except the value of the money that you have disappears. It drops drastically. In fact, just since January 1st of 2009 till today, the value of a dollar is down 38 cents. So if you had a dollar in 2009, it's worth 62 cents today. And you can buy less, and that's why things are more expensive. And that's because of how much debt we added from January 2009 until today. That's 11 years. And we're talking about right now, if we listen to Senator Markey, if we listen to Senator Bernie Sanders, and we listen to what they're proposing, and Kamala Harris has also supported this idea of these monthly payments for these amounts, then you're talking about cutting the value of a dollar today in half, which means inflation goes up. This is going to destroy the poor, who have the worst part of this. And that's not even counting the fact that they want to raise the minimum wage to $15, which we know for a fact actually kills jobs, kills businesses, and leaves more people with less money. Jim mentions Japan recently surpassed China. 1.29 trillion owed by Japan, 1.07 trillion owned by China, 10 trillion owed by the Federal Reserve. Those are new numbers then, because the last I saw was China was above. But we've had Japan owe this much before. It's a problem, but I think the bigger problem is our money is becoming worthless. And their answer is, well, we'll just throw more money at you. Don't think. Here's $2,000. Aren't you happy? Here's $600. Here's $1,400. Here's more money. Oh, you've been locked up for a year. You've been sitting at home in isolation. You can't talk to your friends, your family. You can't go visit them as they die or they're in the hospital or having birth to a child. You can't go out and celebrate your birthday, their birthday. You can barely go to work. If you're going to work, you can only go there and straight back home. You can't relax at all. Oh, and you mean suicides are up exponentially? Domestic abuse is up exponentially? Suicide is up exponentially? Oh, drug abuse is up exponentially? Well, you know what? I know how to fix that. Here's more money. Here's some money. Really? The quality of life is not how much money you have. It's how much life you can live. And the money allows you to live that. I think we all can agree on that. Oh, Jim mentions that was in July 2020. Yeah, I think that number's changed, Jim. But I mean, let me ask everyone, do you agree with me? The quality of life is not based on how much money people throw at you, but rather what you do with the money, the way you get to live life, which money is an aspect of, but you don't need a whole lot of money. You need a whole lot of life. You could be a billionaire sitting in a hole in the wall in a cave. You could have literally an apartment that is lined with gold. You could be Midas. And if you're the only one there to appreciate it, I think that's kind of hollow. That's not living life. But that's what we're expected to do right now. Between the COVID-19 guidelines and the loss of jobs and the inability to go out and express ourselves or to share anything with other people, except on a very limited basis, that's not living life. Jim mentions, the only reason I bring that up is because the Federal Reserve is essentially a private corporation unto itself. It is. It's a quasi-government private entity. That's a fact. Sure. But this is a problem. And the problem is we have been denied the ability to have the First Amendment. We cannot peaceably assemble unless you happen to be under the banner of BLM and Antifa, because we have seen as a fact, it is not a question, it is a fact. We have watched over the summer that they have come out and they have gone BLM and Antifa, and they have burned down cities. They have destroyed businesses. They have killed human beings. They have physically beat up and assaulted human beings. We have the videos. We have seen it. It is not a question. It is not an opinion. It is not a subjective truth. It is the truth. And we have been told that that was a peaceful protest. CNN, MSNBC, as buildings are burning in the background due to arson, we are told that is mostly peaceful. But God forbid, if you do not toe the line of that media-approved ideology, then you are a terrorist and you must be punished. You are an insurrectionist, and now you have a problem because you can't speak to anyone, whether it's online or in person. This is supposed to unify the United States. This is what Biden is calling unification. This is how we bring America together. Don't speak unless you say the right things. And if you don't say the right things, we are going to punish you through every means we can. We're going to bring in the Pentagon to do it. We're going to take away your jobs. We're going to put you on a list. We're going to send you to re-education camps. Thank you, Harry. Harry Jackson thinks the videos work. Thank you. But I mean, this is a conversation. Now, if there is someone here who thinks I am wrong about this, if I am misunderstanding the information I've been presenting to you and have been talking about for years now, if you think I'm wrong, please tell me. I'm not here to tell you, oh, this is the only way you can think of this. That's not my point. My point is, this is what I'm observing. And here are the facts that I can present to you that are showing this to be true. But if I'm missing something, please, I want a member of Antifa, a member of BLM, the Democratic Socialists of America, especially the ones in Ithaca who are willing to use violence. Please don't use violence. Get on here and let's talk about this. Please explain to us all how this is unifying to silence people, to train the people on how they can think and how they can speak and where they can do it. Please tell me how this is a benefit to mankind, and how it's unlike the absolute slaughter that we have seen in the past that has come out of Russia, China, North Korea, Cuba, Venezuela, the worst of despots that we've seen across the world and over history. Please explain to me how I am wrong on that. I mean, if someone thinks I'm wrong. Michael Bowie mentions unification means subjugation. In this case, absolutely. Unification is meant as subjugation from what I can see, because I hear Biden come out and say, well, if you agree with any of the policies that came from the past administration, meaning President Trump, well, and meaning that you're possibly a Republican or a conservative, but more importantly, if you believe in any of those policies, you are a racist. What? And by the way, let's all unify. Even you racists, don't worry, we have a re-education program for you so that you can join us too in the human race. Because if you're not joining us in the human race, if you disagree with us, you are a racist, sexist, homophobe, transphobe, and you need to be punished. This is the message that I am hearing from Kamala Harris, from Joe Biden, from the Democratic Party at this time, the progressive leadership of the Democratic Party. And I have to say, you are out of your mind. I disagree with you, and I will not do this. I will not be part of any re-education program. I will not go and adhere to any of this, and I do not support it. That doesn't mean violence. That doesn't mean I'm going to go kill you, like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez has suggested, like many of the Democrats, like Tammy Duckworth, have suggested. That doesn't mean violence. I am against that. I do not agree with that. But at the same time, I can object. I am an American citizen. I have part of the power of this government because the power of the government is with the people, and we have the right to speak up and tell our government how we want to be governed. That is the 10th Amendment. That is our right. How does this start off? We the people, not we the elected people, not we the elected representatives, not we the neo-nobles of the world. It's we the people. Harry Jackson mentions, I think it's all deeper than we all know. Remember, we have a, quote, phallus right in the backyard of our White House. A phallus? Harry, I'm not sure what you mean by a phallus, because I know what a phallus means, I believe, unless I'm mistaken, which is more a sexual object, so I may be misreading that. So if you can clarify that, I want to follow what you're saying there, because I'm not quite following that. But I mean, folks, am I misunderstanding this? Are these things that they are saying, is this wrong? Dalgrim mentions the Washington Monument. Oh. Yeah, that's what I'm wondering. I'm not quite getting it. But I mean, folks, let's really, really think about this for a second. And I need to I want to get the sound here so you can hear this yourselves. Bear with me 1 second because I'm trying to fix something here. Because I forgot to set the sound settings so that you can hear this. Now, what I'm talking about is when I say that they are saying that we are some kind of, that anyone who opposes this new think, this approved thought process need only hear what CNN's Don Lemon had to say to Chris Cuomo, the brother of Governor Andrew Cuomo, on CNN. And I want you to hear this and tell me, well, does this sound autocratic to you?
Now what you hear is, well, you can't say that everybody who voted for Trump is like who went into the Capitol. Response.
You can't say that. What? Everybody's like
everybody who voted for Trump is like them.
No, I just explained to you. If you are on that side, you need to think about the side you're on. I'm never on the side of the Klan. I am principal people, conservative or liberal, never on the Klan side. Principal people, conservative or liberal, never on the Nazi side. Principal people who are conservative or liberal, never on the side that treats their fellow Americans as less than, that says that your fellow Americans should not exist, that says your fellow Americans should be in a concentration camp, or that sides with slavery, or sides with any sort of bigotry.
Right, and if they say, I don't agree with those people, I just like Trump's policy.
Well, then get out of the crowd with him. Get out of the crowd.
I wasn't in the crowd. I just voted for Trump.
You're in the crowd who voted for Trump. If you voted for Trump, you voted for the person who the Klan supported. You voted for the person who Nazis support. You voted for the person who the alt-right supports. That's the crowd that you are in. You voted for the person who incited a crowd to go into the Capitol and potentially take the lives of lawmakers, took the lives of police officers, took the lives of innocent lives who were there on the Capitol that day. You voted on that side, and the people in Washington are continuing to vote on that side.
Okay, so I just want to make that. Did you hear that? Because there is no question. The answer is, if you are part of the 74 million people in America that voted for President Trump, if you are part of the half of America that have supported at any point in time President Trump as he created more peace in the Middle East than has ever existed since, actually, go back to Carter and with Sadat and the Palestinians. No one has had more, and actually he's been more successful and has been recommended for 3 Nobel Peace Prizes. But if you agree with that, if you agree with increasing the peace and not creating another war, this is the first president in, I believe, over 70 years that who hasn't actually started and continued a war. If you agree with that, well, you know what? You are a Nazi. That's because Don Lemon said so. Because Don Lemon says you are a racist if you don't agree with that. If you don't believe that people have been more free and more capable, that we see under the Trump administration, we have seen more small businesses created by blacks and women and minorities than ever before. Ever. Historic levels of new businesses and the growth of the middle class for minorities. And if you agree with that, you are a racist, a sexist of the worst order. Because Don Lemon doesn't like that. Because you have to agree with his definitions and his way of being. And I have to say, that is worse. You know, the Klan, I do not support the Klan. I do not support racism or sexism or any of that. But I have to say, I really don't support Don Lemon's point of view, that progressive ideology that says, if you don't do what we say, you are evil and we're coming after you. I have a problem with that. I have a problem with someone saying, because I voted for someone for reasons that I have that go well beyond whether I like someone or not, because this isn't a personality test. It's about effectiveness. It's about the quality of life that they have been able to promote, whether they're promoting international peace or not, to protect America or not. When I see someone who's doing that, and I maybe vote for that, and they're telling me that I am evil because I like the fact that our country helped to promote more peace in the world because they have allowed small businesses, minority small businesses, to grow more than anyone else in the last 70 years. You've got to tell them something is wrong with that. Don Lemon is a very evil man. Based on his statements, that makes him a very evil man. Hang on, there's some comments here. Mavis had mentioned, I think the left may have been reading 1984 and taking notes. I've been listening to the audiobook on YouTube, and it's just creepy. I agree. I think it's absolutely terrifying because we are falling into that realm. And I'd like to see people tell me how I'm incorrect on that, especially from those from the left. I want to hear from progressives. Tell me how I'm misunderstanding that, how we are misunderstanding that. Harry mentions that that's right. Jim mentions 1984 took notes on past insurgencies like the Bolshevik Revolution, not the other way around. I agree. Jim mentions that even though the Klan endorsed Biden, yes, and he was a supporter of the senator who was, oh God, now I'm forgetting it, Byrd. Senator Byrd, great big member of the Klan, buddy with Biden, and Biden being the same guy who says he wouldn't integrate schools because he doesn't want his kids to be part of a racial jungle. Racial jungle. That's what he said. You can look it up. It's not news, folks. He said that in the 1970s. A man who says that if you don't vote for him, you're not black. He's deciding your race, your life based on his likes and his preferences. If you don't do what he says, well, you don't count. I'm suddenly not black and Hispanic because I'm a Republican and I don't agree with his ideas of bankrupting our economy with debt. And I don't agree with isolating people and locking them in their homes like they're prisoners, because I see what's happening with drug abuse that has skyrocketed, overdoses that have hit record highs. We have highs in suicide and in domestic abuse. I don't agree with that. And I think people need to be out and enjoying each other and speaking with each other. And he says I'm wrong, and therefore I'm not black because of it. When did he get to be my daddy? Because I guarantee you, he's not. He may want to be, but he can't. Mavis mentions, fun fact, the Klan supported Biden. Yeah, very much so. Tammy has mentioned, hey, Tammy, Don is part of the deep state, meaning Don Lemon. Yes, and that's what that emoji is. Okay. He is a cheater and a liar and doesn't belong in America. He belongs in communist China. I don't want to go to the point of stripping him of his American citizenship. But I can definitely say, yeah, he's right in line with Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez with their socialist communist viewpoints, that they want to turn America into a more communist socialist state because they believe that they will be the leaders of that. By the way, it is very common in these socialists, when we see a country go from any other type of government to a socialist communist government, the people who actually cause that change, the people who actually, like with the Bolsheviks, like what we saw in Cuba, the people who actually bring in that new government, almost always, the majority of those people are the first people who get killed. And you know why? Because if they were effective enough to change a government, they are effective enough to change it again, that they can disrupt whoever's in charge. So those people are on the top of the list of people to get rid of, besides the enemies of the state. But they're on the top of the list, and they routinely wipe those people out. Don Lemon is not going to, Don Lemon, Chris Cuomo, and Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, Bernie Sanders, they're not going to be in charge. They're going to be right there next to me in the re-education camp. It seems they don't pay enough attention to history to understand that. Jim mentions hypocrisy is well paid in blood money these days. Michael Bowie mentions Don Lemon is a paid agitator. Yeah, and I think he is. I do believe that Don Lemon has shown himself to be very, very persuasive, and he is there specifically to target certain groups. The reason why Chris Cuomo isn't saying that is because it's coming, when you hear them say it from the voice of Don Lemon, well, it's supposed to be so that no one else can say, oh, I disagree with him. Well, then you must be a racist. Why? Because Don Lemon's black. No kidding. Now, if you happen to be blind, I understand why you may not know that Don Lemon is black. But guess what? I'm not blind. Yes, I have glasses. I can take them off. I can still see Don Lemon is black. Okay? And so am I. And how am I a racist for calling him out for what he is saying? That he is actually using, the language he is using and the words that he is saying, the meaning of what he has said is, if you do not agree, you are evil and therefore you need to be punished. Because in his view, anyone who doesn't agree is wrong. Well, when did he become Jesus Christ and understand the answer to the universe? Or anyone else that has the same political views? It's one thing if Don Lemon wants to say, I feel like this is a great way to go forward. Okay, we can have that conversation. We can have a discussion. But when you tell me my voice can't be heard because you don't like it, that's no longer a discussion. That is totalitarian censorship. That's you dictating how I can think. You don't get that right. The government doesn't have that power. You don't have to like what I believe, but that doesn't mean you get to change what I believe or to force me to submit to your will. And you know what? I think that's one of the reasons why we see in Washington, D.C. right now, 25,000 troops. Because guess what? Joe wouldn't need 25,000 troops to say, hey, I'm the president, if it wasn't for the fact that we have people like Don Lemon and Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez telling us, and by the way, we're going to re-educate you because you're just thinking wrong. Maybe I misunderstand that. But I'm pretty sure that's why we've never seen that many troops in Washington, D.C. In fact, it's one of the things that everyone has avoided doing outside of the Civil War because of what it means to have that many troops there. That's a military state. That's the message that's going out. If you disagree with us, we will use the full force and power of the government against you. And by the way, what have those 25,000 National Guard troops been told? You can shoot to kill. They have been cleared and authorized to do that. You get to shoot and kill American citizens because they disagree? Now, I understand violence is always wrong, and I'm not encouraging anyone to cause violence. And again, we've said this on this show many, many times, and I will say it again. I refute, I reject, and I disagree with anyone who uses fear, intimidation, violence, or the threat of violence to cause other people to submit against their will. We stand by that. I don't care if it comes from the right or the left. That is meaningless to me. If that is your means to try and get that message out to cause people to submit, then you are wrong, categorically wrong. What you believe is absolutely flawed. But at the same time, I have no problem with people peacefully protesting and saying, I don't agree with you. Maybe that's a crazy idea. Maybe that's a crazy idea. And not everyone's going to like it. And not everyone's going to like everything that I have to say. But that doesn't mean we can't say it. Except if you happen to be, Jim Dorsey with Twitter, who believes that he can control exactly what I have to say, but don't you dare tell Twitter that they can't speak. See, it's really funny. In Uganda, the nation of Uganda, they decided, you know what? We're watching Facebook and Twitter mess with our elections. They are disrupting our elections. And so we're going to block all of the social media companies while we're doing our election. And Twitter goes, we strongly condemn internet shutdowns. They are hugely harmful, violate basic human rights and the principles of the open internet. Have you heard? So here it is. Someone is doing to Twitter and to Jim Dorsey the very same thing that Jim Dorsey has done to over 70,000 American citizens. The number at this moment is over 70,000 American citizens, including the president, who is a world leader. And whether you like him or not, he is still currently the president. And he has silenced all these voices. And when someone says, well, we're going to silence your platform, your ability to influence my election, he goes, oh, no, but that's against basic human rights. What about the basic human rights of the 70,000, more than 70,000 people who use Twitter right now that you just kicked off your platform? And that's just in the last week. How many more? How many tens of thousands more before that? They don't have a basic human right. The principles of an open internet don't apply to all those other people. Hey, Jim, you're a hypocrite of the very worst nature. You don't get your way and you bawl like a baby. But when it comes to what you can do, oh, well, you have absolute ultimate control. And how dare anyone question you? You moron, you putz. As we would say in Russian, pizdish. By the way, the Russians didn't know that. Sorry. They know what that means. But I'm sure the censors, all the other guys don't know. Jack Dorsey. Thank you for the correction. I got Jim in my head for some reason. It's Jack. You're right. Jack Dorsey. That being said, Jack Dorsey, he's an idiot. And he's wrong. And this is why we're seeing, as I reported earlier in the week, we've seen in North Idaho, there are American citizens who have gone to their ISP providers and said, hey, guess what? We're getting rid of it. We're going to block it completely. You can't go to Twitter and Facebook in my family and my home because we don't want their poison. Literally, they're poisoning people. And by the way, Jack Dorsey, the only thing that saved Twitter was President Trump. If it wasn't for him, this company would have completely folded. And it's going back to there. Why? Because of the very same thing that we are seeing Twitter do right now. You are literally destroying the ability for human beings, Americans and others, to speak. And as you do that, your company is worth nothing. Yes, it's an echo chamber for the far left. Fantastic. Have a great time with that. No one wants to pay for that. No one wants to advertise on that. Because it is authoritarian and it is opposed and it's repugnant. Or at least that's how I feel about it. Jack Dorsey looks like a ringer of Rasputin. Well, I suppose if I let my goatee here grow a little bit, I might as well. And the fact that I speak Russian will probably make it even more so. And by the way, when I was mentioning before, some people may think, hey, Mike, but you went a little too far, with the whole, well, Don Lemon's black thing. Okay. No, I didn't. Because here is an opinion piece from Mediaite talking about Don Lemon's remarks about Trump voters and the Klan and Nazis are a slap in the face to 74 million Americans. Now, you may think, oh, my God, Mediaite, that sounds like an article where they're going to take on Don Lemon and say he did something that was bad. No, that's not what they're saying. What they are saying is, quote, it's painful because as a black man, Don Lemon's words about racism carry extra weight, and it's painful for people like Cuomo or Erickson or Biggs to hear a black man indict people whom they wish to believe are decent. It's a slap to the face to 74 million Americans. There's no other way to say it. In Lemon's case, it's an easy answer. Of course he should not apologize. All 74 million of those voters and people like Cuomo who may count some of those 74 million as friends should be thanking Don Lemon and asking for another. A slap in the face stings, but it can wake you up. So, yeah, we're seeing the far left say, not only did Don Lemon slap people in the face, it's a good thing. Not only did he insult 74 million Americans, not only did he demonize these people and attribute to them some of the worst and darkest aspects of humanity that we've seen in the 20th century, they're saying, you know what, you deserve it and you should get it again. Because you're evil and low and vile. So let me ask you something. If Don Lemon's words, and I want to be sure, I want to show you this. If Don Lemon's words about racism carry extra weight because he's black, I'm black, what about the weight of my words telling you that everything he said is bunk? That to attribute people to just blankly say, well, you're white, so you're evil, is wrong. What about when I say that to say that people are demonic because of their political preferences is wrong? What weight does that hold? Are you going to tell me that because I'm a black man, I don't have a voice? Or are you going to tell me, like you say to Kanye and so many others, and I have heard Antifa say about me and to me that, oh, I'm not black? Who gives you that right? When we hear Joe Biden say, you're not black unless you do what I say, what about that? What about the weight that carries? Because that is racist. I mean, does that make sense, folks? Am I missing the boat here? Am I overreacting? Does this not make sense? I'm a big boy. I can take it. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong. If you think I'm oversensitive, please tell me. That's what this conversation's about. I will never learn if I don't hear back from people. But I'm pretty sure that if I'm trying to use the same rules that they're using for Don Lemon, saying, well, when he says you're a racist, it carries a lot of weight. It should carry the same kind of weight when I say, no, you're not. Just because you have a different viewpoint, because you agree with the different politics. If you're a libertarian, if you're a conservative, if you're a Republican, if you're a Democrat that's not a progressive, because they are not the same thing, and you don't agree with them, I'm not going to turn around and tell you that you're a racist. They will. The problem seems to be with them, not us. Most of America has no problem with someone. You know, I've been alive for almost 53 years. That's 5 decades. You want to talk about racism? Let's talk about the 70s that I was alive, in the early 80s that I was alive, and what I lived through. And yes, I've seen racism in many forms, many times in my life. And the great news is, I've seen less of it as I get to be older and older. The things that I see around me right this second aren't. We have conquered so much of the problem. I'm not going to give you some kind of sugar-coated fairy tale that, oh, we've made it all perfect. No, we haven't, and I don't expect that. We're human beings, and things take time. But I can tell you, in half a century, I have seen massive changes. Massive changes and massive improvements. Does that mean we stop trying to improve? No, it doesn't. But it does mean let's acknowledge the reality of what it is and stop trying to drag people down as if this is 1930s America. It's not. The world is not in the 19th century. We're in the 21st century. I don't know. But, you know, you can't say that on national TV. You can barely say that on the internet. Because people are supposed to be evil by the color of their skin. Which sounds exactly like, to me, that some people are less human than others. Some are subhuman because of the color of their skin. Remember, that's what they started with. Back in the 1800s, the 1700s, the early 19th century, we were told, if you happen to have a certain skin color, you were less than human. How is that different than today, that if you have a certain skin color, you are an evil person, that there is white guilt, that you are, by definition and by existence, a problem? I don't see the difference. Just because you change the word from black to white doesn't mean that the ideology behind it is any better or any different. It's still racist. It's just that it's today's popular racism versus yesterday's popular racism. And this is separating America. Again, going back to the theme of the whole thing. These are things that are separating America. And because I'm saying this, I'm on a list with Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and God knows how many others that are willing to say that as soon as they get the opportunity, and if Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and Bernie Sanders get the funding from Joe Biden and the Democratic-controlled government, they're going to throw me in an education camp. How is that not terrifying to everyone? And if they can do this to the president of the sitting president of the government, they can do it to any world leader and any individual person. If they can do these things to the most powerful people in the world, they can do it to everyone in the world. And that should terrify people. Back to the comments. Chicken Beak mentions more than the first few million years of the human race, for sure. Or however long it's been. Yeah. Dow mentions that would mean that there would be an acknowledgement of reasonableness. Progressive, critical race theory arguments are so weak that proponents are encouraged to cancel opposition rather than argue. Anyone who has to cancel an argument or a debate, a discussion, if you have to silence that voice rather than speak with it, then you don't have an argument. You have force of will. You're looking to have people submit, and you don't know what you're talking about. I will say that absolutely. I have regularly and continue to speak to people. I know people in BLM, in Antifa. I know Democrats, elected and regular people. I know people in the Libertarian Party at the highest levels and run of the mill. I know people in the Republican Party, locally and across the nation. I have conversations with them all on a regular basis, and I disagree with them all on a regular basis, depending on the issue. And that's perfectly fine. That's okay. We don't all have to agree. That's not what America is about. And I accept that because neither I nor any other human being are Jesus or God, and we don't know everything. And part of everything that we all believe is wrong, and part of it is all right. The question is, which parts are which? Well, you only find that out by having conversations, looking at the world, trying to figure out what's going on, trial and error. And you don't get that by saying you can't speak. You know what? If that's like what they told Columbus, don't go there. Why? The world is flat. The world's flat? No, yeah, the world's flat. I don't think the world's flat. I want to take a boat and see if the world's flat. Well, you'll fall off the face of the earth. Well, yeah, I could, but my life, let me go do it. No. Until he finally found someone who said, hey, here's a boat. Go ahead. Hey, look at that. He didn't fall off the face of the earth. The world is a globe. Hello, Copernicus. We don't learn anything by simply going, oh, well, that's what they said, so it must be true. That's all there is. They said it, it's true, that's it. How about, let's remember. I'll give you a great example of what I'm talking about. So now that we're seeing President Trump leave, we're seeing the Republican Party lose power in the government. We have Mayors Lightfoot out of Chicago, and we have Governor Cuomo coming out, and they are suddenly going, guess what? Don't worry about COVID. We need to reopen the economy. No kidding. They're now mentioning that, quote, there was a peer-reviewed study on COVID-19, which was conducted by a group of Stanford researchers and published in the Wiley Online Library on January 5th of 2021, analyzed coronavirus case growth in 10 countries in early 2020, according to Newsweek. Using that model, the researchers determined that there is, quote, no clear significant beneficial effect of more restrictive measures, in other words, lockdowns, on the case growth in any country. So suddenly, with the change of government, We're hearing more and more of our leaders saying, hey, lockdowns don't stop COVID-19. Masks and separation don't stop COVID-19. It does destroy our economy. It does close businesses forever. Maybe we could kind of open up the government. Maybe. What about everyone who's been telling you that obvious fact for months, including the European chief of the WHO, World Health Organization? What about all the evidence that we have seen that shows that literally doing lockdowns and the current COVID restrictions are actually worse than COVID itself? There are more people who have been dying and are suffering because of the COVID restrictions than COVID itself. And that's not to say that COVID doesn't exist. I'm not saying that because I know that's what, YouTube and Facebook would love to hear, but that's not the case. What I am saying is they exist, and what they're doing about it is worse than them existing. Dale mentions, I have dealt with weaponized bureaucratic departments. It's very easy to abuse the system with no recourse for the accused. It is terrifying to think that one day CPS could arrive on the doorstep. Well, that's another expansion of what we're talking about. And I was talking about it recently, the red flag laws, where we see the government completely throw out, and we're seeing it right now with President Trump and the current impeachment vote that's going on. There is no due process in this. He was not given a chance to defend himself. And if you look at the red flag laws that Joe Biden supports and wants to make national, there is no existence of your right to privacy, nor is there a right to due process. Someone accuses you and you are punished. It's exactly straight out of the book of Don Lemon. Let me accuse you and I'm going to punish you. Even though there is no proof, there is no justification. It's just me saying you are an evil bee. And this is where our government's going to, because that's what we're hearing from Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez too. You have been accused of not thinking the way that she would like you to think. So you must be re-educated. You must have your property taken away from you, firearms and otherwise. You have to have your children, literally, your children must be taken from your home, which the government is doing. And they are hiding from the public, as I complained about and sent out a letter to the New York State legislature, which they over a week now have not responded, will not address at all, will not talk about the fact that New York State and 16 other states, through the red flag laws, are literally going into homes and taking people's children away from them based on an accusation without any proof, without any crime. No due process whatsoever. And that's exactly what Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez is looking to expand, to go from the red flag laws to being able to put people in re-education camps. And Don Lemon is cheerleading that on CNN, saying, yep, that's what you got to do. And if you don't agree with me, you're a racist and a sexist, and that means it's deserved. Chicken Beat mentions, in the words of Captain Picard, hey, good one. That's Picard from TNG or Picard from the TV show, which sucks. Quote, the first speech censored, the first thought forbidden, the first freedom denied, chains us all irrevocably. I like that quote. That's a good quote, Chicken Beak. I like that. Dow mentions, with CPS there would be four choices. Sue the department and, by extension, the state, refuse to cooperate and be locked in family court, retaliate, and lose to the government. That's the problem. See, and that's what this separation is doing. Because over and over and over again, we are hearing from what is literally a splinter of the Democratic Party. The progressives, the Democratic Socialists, they are splinters of the party. They have a big, big voice. And they shout. They're like bullies. They speak really loud, but they are useless. And there's very few of them. But they're speaking really loud through their control over the internet and over news media. And they're saying, well, you've got to do this. And they're separating people. And that's what's causing the problems What we saw at the Capitol has absolutely, in my opinion, has nothing to do with President Trump. It has to do with the separation that's going on in our government, that the fact that we have authoritarians, oligarchs, people who want to have complete control over your life, micromanaging your life. That's the problem. You know, I don't have problems with Democrats. I have problems with people who want to put me in a re-education camp. I think we all do. Greg mentions it's too late to speculate the America. Oh, hang on. Hello, and thank you for joining us. This is No Soundbites Allowed. And who's the guest that we're speaking with today?
Hey, this is Jason from Binghamton. Hi,
Jason. And before you start, Jason, please remember, folks, not only can you contact us on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter, but you can also call into the program at 607-242-1582, just as Jason is doing. What's going on?
Yeah, so you know, you're on a topic that I wanted to talk about, and
I'm on several of them. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, trust me, I got like 3 different things I could talk about right now that I have really in-depth thoughts on. But the one that really, honestly, you know, bothers me, and personally probably the most, is the Child Protective Services, and this comes to certain divisions within our country that are pretty much to a tipping point where, you know, when people want to talk about like Civil War issues, this is probably one of them, and it's just simply, you know, about the gender identity issue. And where you have one clan of parents saying that a child should be able to pick its gender, and you have another clan that says that, you know, if you choose to let your kid pick any gender than that which they were born with, you are abusing your child. And so you have two. Yep. So you have two different segments of people who are completely opposed to the others. Both are calling each other, you know, child abusers. And in the end, the individual who's going to make the decision of who is right will be those who are in power. And right now, you know, when it comes to the people in power and who have authority, you have a lot of these, you know, doctors who are basing a lot of their reasoning off of, you know, extremely progressive or what we call woke, you know, theories. And another, you know, issue as well with this entire thing is that there is, unfortunately, a lot of money into these transition, you know, processes which actually, you know, incentivize, you know, doctors to forgo in that direction with like zero resistance. But like I said, though, is just that when you want to look at, you know, just, you know, a simple topic where there's a massive division in parents, and you want to see a, you know, a split within our country, when CPS comes into your house, says that, well, if you don't allow your kid to transition, or you're telling them that they're a boy and they're a girl when they say they're otherwise, and if you don't, you know, allow them to do what they want with their body at a 5-year-old, you know, can do, you know, I mean, that's pretty much war, I think, for most parents.
Well, you're right, and it's just another level of the problems that we're speaking about. And I'm glad you bring it up, because if you notice, everything I'm talking about is talking about how we're separating our country, dividing each other on mostly political issues, but these are also life issues. These are life choice issues. And I have to believe that as much as I want anyone to have their life choices, do I think a 5-year-old gets to decide whether they're whatever? No. That's why 5-year-olds don't vote. It's why we don't let them drive cars. It's a realizing and understanding that they are not mature enough to do these things. They can barely dress themselves. And you're going to tell me that a kid who can barely dress themselves is going to be making a life choice that will take them through 70 years of their life, 80 years of their life, on something they know nothing about. They don't know what gender is, seriously, or relationships are. They don't know about their sexuality, really. And, you know, this is a problem. And yet again, we're being told, And if you don't agree, the full force of government will be used against you because something must be wrong with you. Not that you've committed a crime, not that you've gotten due process, not that you've gotten to make your argument, but the full force of government is going to be used against you because some autocrat has decided that this is the way it will be and you have no voice. That is not America, not in my view. So I agree with you.
Yeah, it's 100% right. I mean, it's the same rhetoric that we hear from these elite individuals that tell us, you must follow the science, and they deny you any opportunity to speak anything conflicted of what their beliefs are and what their conclusions are.
It's never about the science. This is, you know what? I wish people would drop the pretense from the left, the progressives, that they're not talking about science. They could care less. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez went on 60 Minutes and said, I don't care about the facts. I care about how I feel. She said that. It was on, I'm paraphrasing the words, but that's what she said on 60 Minutes. She's worried about her interpretation of the truth, her feelings. And then turns around and says, and here is the science. You don't care. You just told me you don't care about science. We're listening. I mean, in every aspect of everything that we are seeing done to our nation right now, it's all about how a small group of people feel. And when they turn around and say, well, it's all about the science, you're not using science. This is not scientific. I hate that argument.
No, you're 100% right. And essentially what AOC had done, she has created in her own world her own dogmatic religion. Because the thing is that what she says is that my morality, I don't have to be factually true to be morally right.
Yeah,
well, how is she measuring her own morals? Well, she's measuring it with her own ideology, with her own, dogmatic religion. Mm-hmm. And she, as somebody who's so anti-religion and it wants to, pretty much, prosecute Christians, for their, position and their beliefs. I mean, she's coming from a place where her own religious, beliefs, her own ideology is forcing others, to do as she says, because that's what it is. It's about her being morally, right. And it doesn't matter about the facts because, her God, her, deity, of her religion, of her wokeness, is more superior than, everybody else's, perspective, so it is insane.
It is absolutely insane because this is the speech that you hear from dictators and totalitarians and yes, communists, that they say, well, of course we're right. We're the only ones who are right because we have the only answers because somehow they became Jesus or something. It's that they suddenly were endowed with brilliance through osmosis because they ate the right kale or something. I don't know. They got more organic avocados than everyone else. I don't know what it is, but it's so asinine for them to be not only just that arrogant, but to be that vicious and violent. And this is viciousness and violence. And this is why I'm afraid, like I mentioned, that this is going to bring us to what's happening in Hong Kong. That wasn't really talked about in the world because if you look at it and you see the story, you'll realize we're on that same path. We are days away from doing the same thing, where suddenly the Chinese government is going around, grabbing up a bunch of people, and they're disappearing forever because they had an idea, and the idea wasn't the same as what the elites in the government said. And I'm terrified about that. When people are telling me that because someone is black, they have the right idea. Well, I'm black too, and I have an opposite idea. Maybe it's not about the skin color. Maybe it's just about what we think. Go ahead.
Let me give you my opinion on the Hong Kong situation because I have been looking into that. Uh-huh. One of the comparisons I would look at, though, is that when you see what China is doing, with Hong Kong, it reminds me a lot of what had happened in World War II when Hitler pretty much just decided to take and annex Austria. And it was kind of one of those things where they're like, well, everybody says like, well, that was bad, but you know what? We're not going to go to war with it. We're not going to fight it. And the bottom line is that with China is that they are pushing the limits to see what they can get away with, and they knew that with Trump, they could only do so much because he definitely was going to stand his ground with them, But with Biden, I'm pretty certain that this little test with Hong Kong is basically they're just going to wipe through. And the bigger thing, though, is just that, I've been watching a lot of news, coming out of Australia, and the entire coast along there. China has so much money invested in all these different, small little countries and islands across the, entire ocean over there.
All of Africa.
What's happening now is that they're pretty much now, these places are not able to pay them back. And so what China's doing is they're basically just taking all the ports from them as we speak. And the position they're putting on Australia in particular, I mean, they're squashing their economy in every little, place. Anything that they export to China, China's, been bullying them and pretty much dictating what they can manufacture in their own country. And without the alliance of the United States, to push back against China, without Trump, honestly, it looks pretty bleak in the entire Pacific Ocean.
Well, it looks pretty bleak almost everywhere. But by the way, I do want to say it's not all useless, by the way, because you look at Australia, I actually look over in Great Britain. And one person in particular, if anyone's had a chance, I do recommend. Her name is Kemi Badenoch. She is a minister over in London, in Great Britain, and you got to listen to this woman speak. She's impressive, and I really think that, and she's stating kind of what I'm saying, probably better. The same idea that we have to resist this. We have to work together and fight against this. But I agree with you. It is an absolute fact that we are seeing communist China. They've gone into all of Africa. They've been trying to get into South America. They've been going around the world and picking up little pieces all over the place. And it's a big issue. But I do want to give some other people a chance to speak because you brought up some really great points, and it falls right in line with what we're speaking with today. But I do want to give some people, in case anyone else wants to give a call in, because they can.
Sure.
But I thank you for that, and I'm going to look for your comments here as well.
Yep.
Okay, Jason?
Thanks. Yep. Have a good one. Bye.
Bye. So, folks, just like Jason just did, you too can call in. The phone number is 607-242-1582, and you can share your thoughts on the various issues that are going on and affecting us. And I have seen a lot of the comments here. So, yes, Makeup, I agree with you. He has been very correct. And Dal, follow the science. Again, follow special engineering. And my feelings, you conservative bigot, is basically what they are saying. I agree with you there. Insensitive. Yeah, don't worry about it, Dal. The troll's back. We're going to ignore him. Greg mentions that both sides of the aisle are trolls, as well as mentioning that Great Britain has fallen to globalists. I would say, Greg, in my conversations, and I know there is a frequent audience member, a couple of them from Great Britain, in Scotland and in Wales, and if they come on, I'm sure they would have some comments as well, but it hasn't fallen yet. Just like America hasn't fallen yet. But we are in danger of falling, and there is a problem. But in speaking about it and speaking out and being able to address these failures and the weakness of the other side and pointing out how they are being authoritarian helps us to stop that from happening peacefully. And that's the key word. We want to try and do this peacefully because no one wants to see a second civil war. It's bloody. We've seen civil wars across the world and in our own country. It is not something anyone wants to see happen if it absolutely can be avoided, because it is irrevocable, the things that happen with that. It's deadly and dangerous. Cyrax mentions that they're going to send troops on the 20th for the inauguration because Biden, the fraudulent president, he says, fears the real American patriots. But when the burn, looting, murdering was protesting, rioting, he didn't fear. He didn't care. He didn't say a word, along with all of the other leadership of the Democrats. In fact, they went so far as with Representative Nadler saying it didn't exist. You're making it up. Minnesota, it got burned down. that was just an accident. Maybe a cow knocked over a lantern. It couldn't possibly be Antifa, even though we saw Antifa members go out and murder people. Literally, there's video of it. But, you know, that's because they're protecting their ideology, because it's about their feelings, their morality. It has nothing to do with fact. It's not about science. It's not about fact. It's about do what we say or else, and we're going to punish you. And they happen to be in the control of our cultural centers, of the internet, of news media, and at the moment, the government, and they are saying, we're going to use all of this to pick you out because you're alone. And I want to say it again. We are not alone. The majority of America tends to agree with the things that we are sharing and discussing right now. I'm not saying that people are all, you know, the majority of America is Republicans. I'm not saying that. I'm not saying they're conservatives, libertarians, or even Democrats. I am absolutely saying they're not progressives. But I am saying that the majority of America can come to a consensus. We're basically in the center, if not center right, on most issues, and that we would generally agree. And the only way that they can maintain the power and make the changes that they want to make, like as Jason mentioned, trying to get kids to be able to change their genders at, you know, when they're under 10 years old, when we're seeing people go around and saying, well, you have to do this. I am the new special group that has to be put above everyone else. That when we hear them say that, well, because of your birth and the color of your skin, you must be evil. The only way they get away with that stuff is if they oppress us. And oppression only works if people can't speak. If people can't speak, because that's the first thing. You have to have the thought, then you have the speech, and then you can take action. It works that way every time throughout history. And they're trying to stop us from even having the thought. And that's a problem. That's dangerous. And that's why I really do commend people like Minister Kemi Badenoch for standing up and saying, no, that's not going to happen. And people like Ted Cruz when he's doing it. Rand Paul when he's doing it. When we see them stand up and actually say, no, you know what, I'm not going to go with this. I'm not going to do this. Dal mentions that Hong Kong was a travesty and Taiwan will be next. Absolutely. And absolutely, China is on an expansionistic run. They are expanding their influence. And unlike back in the day when you would just go straight up and colonize a country, they're doing it through their economic influence. Not to say that America hasn't done the same thing, but the difference there is America isn't really taking over countries. Communism is. Belt and Road Trap. I'm not sure what that means, Dal. Mary mentions that check out the book, America's First Adversary. Okay, I'm not familiar with that book, Mary. Dal goes, it's not funny how for years people described the slippery slope argument as a false debate tactic on par with the straw man, yet here we see it playing out in real time on a daily basis on multiple different avenues, whether it's the Second Amendment, the First Amendment, we're talking about gender identity, politics, we're talking about the economy. Absolutely. Greg mentions, I think that as long as we use Dominion voting systems, we will never get rid of the communists. These systems were made to cheat and not for use as actual voting systems. Let me go one further, Greg. It's not Dominion voting systems because you can change. We've changed the people who make the voting systems. We've had different people who've counted it. If we don't have transparency and if we have an unwillingness for our government to step in and say, let's do an audit, let's make the public sure and confident and clear that this was the actual result. If we can't have confidence in what the count is of the vote and the way the vote was taken, then we have no confidence in our government. And again, that leads us to what we saw on January 6th. That leads to the disruption and separation in our nation at this time. It's not Dominion. Yes, they're one of the factors. It was also the fact that we had 4 people sitting in a room by themselves counting for 2 hours, some of them recounting the same stack of votes 3 times in a row that we saw on video. It's a lot of problems. It's the dead that were voting that we have seen at greater numbers than ever before. It's the fact that we have, like in the New York 22nd race, where a judge is accepting votes 30 days after the election when someone found it in a draw. If you have no faith and confidence in the election, you have no faith and confidence in the government that happens after that election. So we need to fix that. We need to be able to prove to the American people, we need to give transparency and say, here's the vote and here's the audit of the vote. And yes, this was a fair vote, if in fact that's what happened. Roy mentions, Nadler said Antifa is a myth, and Biden said Antifa is just an idea. We are not blind. We know anarchists when we see it. And we see, and you know what, and we're not blind. When you walk through Minneapolis and you see a war zone that has been burned down, when you walk through Seattle, Portland, Austin, down in Brooklyn, New York, and Rochester, Colorado, when you go through these cities, Atlanta with its attempted autonomous zone, when you walk through these cities and you see this destruction that's been going on, literally destruction and arson and murder that have happened in Indianapolis with Jessica Dottie Whitaker, you cannot deny this. But they believe in, don't believe your eyes, believe what we say. Believe our feelings first, and that is a problem. Dow mentions, so the way to protect elections would be to see how to insulate them at the local level to start. What kind of power does your local community have in determining election policy? Actually, local communities have a huge amount of power when they elect to do it. But very often we don't see that. They don't have the will to do so. I'll give you an example. In Broome County, County Executive Jason Garnar, who I know and is someone I've spoken with, and he's been on the program before doing interviews, he had no political will to fight against the COVID restrictions. In fact, he went with that and tried to impose unofficially, without any power of law, but yet went on using the news media and the power of the government to say that everyone during March, during the lockdowns, to tell people that they need to be isolated in their homes every other day, and you can only go outside every other day, effectively telling people that they're prisoners in their own home, that they're in solitary confinement. That is beyond his power. So what? And that tells you the example of how much power does a local government have. When we have county executives saying, you're a prisoner in your home and you can't go outside, with no ability to empower that, but saying that with the full force of government, knowing fully well that it is in an illegal declaration, that, yeah, we can change the way elections are done. They just don't, our elected officials don't have the will to do so. Greg mentions we can't speak. We have been silenced on most platforms, and Biden hasn't even been sworn in yet. It will get worse. Well, that's why I ask you, while I have the time, while I am still, and not always, because I see it gets censored on a regular basis, but while we have the opportunity to be on the social media, share this, because we'll use the algorithms against them. Let more people hear this and join in and add their voices. We're growing. We can continue to grow, and that means we're able to reach more people and have a bigger conversation. And as long as we can speak, we can have a change. We can make change because we are able to have our voices heard. That's what the First Amendment is about. It's only when we comply and stop speaking and stop thinking and are restricted in what we can say and think, then it becomes 1984. Then it becomes a totalitarian government. Then Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, Bernie Sanders, Joe Biden, Kamala Harris, Nancy Pelosi. That's when they win, because they can't win in any other way. Mary mentions Oliver North was talking about it, written by Robert McFarland, John Poindexter, and Richard Levine, about China takeover of countries. I've been speaking about it on and off for a couple of years as well. It is a problem, and it is a growing problem. Cyrax mentions the only way we get back our freedom is if we as if we, the people, stand with those Republicans that are left. We, the people, run the world, not these politicians. Republicans, conservatives, libertarians, independents, people who say, I don't follow politics. Because I think it should be very apparent for people who don't pay attention to politics that politics is absolutely paying attention to them. And they are using the fact that people have apathy and don't want to hear about politics. And in that vacuum of them doing nothing, these people are coming in and saying, well, I'm going to do a lot. The fact that no one is saying, you can't come in and take my children away because of the red flag law is part of the reason why they are able to do that. Hang on. I need to fix my camera real quick. We got a new camera, so its batteries are less than perfect. So please bear with me. And I apologize, folks. It's technology. We switched cameras, and so that made it a little bit harder to do some of the stuff that we like to do here. And, well, I got to fix this, but it costs money. And if you notice, I don't make money off of this. I do this because I want to, because I believe in it. So, makes it a little harder to get all the equipment that we need. We're going to be back up in just a couple seconds here. Thank you for your patience with me. All right, we should, come on. Come on. Come on. Why is the camera down? Come on, stupid camera. Come on. Sorry about that. Okay. We should be coming up on the camera. Why is it not coming up? Of course not. Of course not. You know? Come on. It's one of those days, folks. Technology is not working with me at this moment. Nope, wrong one. Where is it? What? All right. What about camera 2? Sorry, folks. It's technology is working against me here. And I'm trying to make it work with us. So bear with me a second. I apologize. It's the joys of having very little money. Nope, that's not the one I want. Why is this not? Sorry, folks. But obviously, we've been talking about a lot of very important issues. A lot of idea. There it goes. Okay. There we go. So, the power of the government is really and truly and only with us. And it's only when we allow them to think that they have power above and beyond us is when we see these problems with government. Agent Black. Agent Black's back. Yes. And earlier I've been speaking about Kemi Badenoch. And I think Agent Black would know about her, and he can speak towards how good she is, I believe. I lost track of some of the spots we're at. So I'm just going to pick back up. Dow mentions that, Roy, camera gremlins are real. Yes, they are. And that's what happens when you try and upgrade the technology and improve it, and it doesn't quite work the way that you want it to. But we're working on it. And Dow mentions that I'm an American. I have a hard time with people trying to force me to do stuff. Dad always said I have authority issues. The Overton window has shifted so hard that if you're not a progressive leftist, you're on the right. Kind of. Yeah, that's true. Hang on one second, folks. Yeah, that is kind of true. We've seen the Overton window. For those who don't know, that is a political spectrum test, essentially. And it is a problem. But because we've seen such a shift, and we've seen a shift because people like Don Lemon are able to say the things that they're saying. But I can tell you at the same time, there is hope out there. There is hope out there because we see things like what we see here in the town of Enfield. The town of Enfield has put out a civility resolution. And that's something I think that was very important. That they should treat everyone courteously, listen to others respectfully, give open-minded consideration to all viewpoints, to focus on the issues and avoid personalizing debate, embracing respectful disagreement and dissent as our rights that are inherent components of an inclusive public process and tools for forging sound decisions. This is important. Why don't we hear that? I'm not hearing that from the left, the progressive left, whether it's BLM, Antifa, or the elected officials in Congress right now. They're not saying that. This isn't what we're seeing. Mind you, we do generally see that more from the right than the left. I'm not saying that the right is perfect, but we see it more often from them. Why don't we see it at all from the left? Why are they so opposed? Why are they so hopeful to split this nation apart, to destroy the American institution as it exists right now? It's a question we really have to ask. What are they gaining from this? They think they get short-term power. If that short-term power destroys this nation, rips us apart, then have they really gained anything? I don't know, because I don't hear from the left, and I don't hear them answering the question that why are they doing this? As an example, and I know a lot of people have seen this one, is we were talking about it, Bill A352. I want to bring this up because I hadn't had a chance to speak about it before. New York Assembly Bill A352 is the denial of American citizens to be able to have a bulletproof vest. And again, this goes to the separation of people. This is the destruction of our rights. You no longer, there are Democrats, 4 of them, who are attempting right now in the assembly to pass this bill that says you cannot protect your family, that you cannot passively give your family the protection of a bulletproof vest, even as crime goes skyrocketing, even as we see more gun crimes that are happening right now, because people are feeling oppressed, because there is not enough help, because we see the left trying to say, hey, let's get rid of the police. Because of these things that are happening, we're seeing people say, I want to protect my family. I want to give my kids, my wife, myself, a bulletproof vest. A bulletproof vest, something that will not do anything except make sure that you're okay. It won't kill you. It doesn't kill anyone else. All it does is stop bullets and or knives, depending on the model that you get. Body armor. And they're saying that is illegal for you to do. You can't protect yourself that way. And I have to ask the question, why in the world can we not? That is one of the most insane things I've ever heard. That is the same thing as the government saying you can't protect yourself against anything at any time, anywhere. Why can't I have a bulletproof vest? There is no state that I am aware of, and I looked through all the laws, and I did not see a single state that said that unless there is a federal statute that says that if you are a convicted felon, no, you cannot get a bulletproof vest. But nowhere else does it say anywhere that a law-abiding American citizen can't protect themselves. And why? And we have to ask the biggest question about this. Why would anyone in their right mind say you cannot defend yourself, your family, your friends? Why can you not do that? Why would you deny anyone that right? Who in their right mind would even come up with the law saying you don't have a right to defend yourself passively, peacefully. There is no offensive capability with a bulletproof vest. And we went into that in great detail in the video, and we published that on January 15th. But I have to say, it doesn't make sense to me. And it tells you that there is a massive disconnect, that there is something else going on here. That for someone in a government, local government, state government, for someone to say, hey, I want you to be defenseless. I want you to even try and defend yourself is a crime. And this is about the mental state that it is putting people into. It is a message to your mind. It is a way of thinking, saying, do not even think of defending yourself against things that are coming against you. You must submit. That's how I read that. That's the only intention I can read from that bill. The only thing I can take from that is you must submit. You cannot resist. And to resist is to be a criminal, and we will punish you from defending yourself. Do what we say. That is what I get from that law. That is what I understand, because I've been thinking about it since I published this, and I do recommend it. It's short, and I'm very angry in it. But I have to say, that's the only thing I can get from that is you have to submit, because if you don't submit, you are the problem. And that's a mindset. That's a mentality that's out there that's growing, and that is a problem. And again, this is why America's separating. Let me go back to some of the comments here. And Agent Black, I see you commented, so I'm going to get right back to you. Greg mentions that the communists will soon be our masters. Biden is their puppet. I disagree, Greg. That's never going to, not while I'm alive. I don't agree with that. I don't agree with that while I'm alive. The next generation, I don't know. They've been raised to believe this is the right way to go, so I don't know about that. But hopefully they will learn. Timmy Hoover. Timmy, you're new. Hi, Timmy. It's good to have you on the program. Timmy says that they don't want their opinions challenged by any means. I experienced this in college. Heck, look at what happened at BU. That was a year ago or so, that the students borderline assaulting other students. It wasn't borderline, Timmy. As I saw in my conversations with the students who were attacked by a mob, 3 students were attacked by a mob of over 200 students, called specifically, and these were called by the Binghamton University progressives. They specifically called out and said that they wanted to harass and intimidate and harm a group of individuals because of their ideology, because they had a different way of looking at life. They had a different view. And that is what we're seeing right now and you can go from Pelosi straight on down. You can go from Biden straight on down. That's what they're saying right now. You have to do this. You are evil. You're racist, sexist, homophobe, transphobe if you disagree. And these are all words meant to only do, the only reason why they say that is so you'll silence, because you're not supposed to answer that. You're not supposed to defend yourself. Just like with the bulletproof vest. You're not supposed to defend yourself. You're supposed to just submit. Just take it. Because we're powerful. No, you're only powerful because the government, because we, the people, give you that power, and we are powerful, and we are not alone. And as long as they think and that's what at Binghamton University, the Binghamton University progressives and the progressive leaders of tomorrow plot from in the community wanted to try and intimidate people to make them think you have no choice. And the fact is we do, and they know it, and they know they are outnumbered. And that's why they try and use fear and intimidation, but it won't work. Agent Black mentions, patriots won't let that happen, Greg, and I agree with you. Timmy mentions, this state specifically legislates with the mindset everyone is out to fight the state or take part in major crime, which violates the Constitution. This state is based on the idea of the whims of Governor Cuomo and the Democratic Party, which is essentially the only party in here. They control the entire state legislature, and they are looking to move towards a progressive ideology. They want to become more and more socialist. And as they do so, we see our state lose more and more money, lose more and more people. We're losing more and more businesses. We are falling apart at the seams in New York State, just like in California, similar, and we're being followed by Pennsylvania, by Illinois, by Michigan. They're following us because it doesn't work. It never has worked. And they know this, and that's why they're so angry and try and restrict our rights so much, I believe. That's my personal belief. Cyrax mentions the reason you can't protect yourself is because they really want people dead. I'd like to believe no. I don't believe anyone wants people dead, but I do think they want people to submit. There is a difference. That's why they're talking about re-education camps. But then again, it's a slippery slope. And I agree with you. You start with one, it's very easy to get to the other. If you dehumanize someone to the point that they have to be re-educated, if you're dehumanizing people saying you have no voice and no ability to do anything except submit, then it's pretty easy to also say that person doesn't need to be alive. So it is a scary and dangerous slippery slope. Roy mentions, once bulletproof vests are illegal, next they will be banning karate, boxing, mixed martial arts, etc. Agent Black mentions, I believe the election was a sting operation. I believe the arrests and military tribunals are coming. Roy, I want to take Roy's question about bulletproof vests. Agent Black, I know you're over in Great Britain, and can you tell me, and I don't know at the moment, is body armor illegal there? Because I know knives are illegal in London, even though that hasn't stopped knife crime. It hasn't stopped gun crime in London. But I know that that's one thing. Do they also restrict people from being able to protect themselves passively? Because that seems insane to me. But I want to just know, is this something that's a trend in other countries? Timmy mentions New York State legislates for New York City first and takes the rest of the state for granted. All we are here is to support the city financially or using our resources. That's how Albany sees upstate. I can't argue with you on that, Timmy. Jason mentions that problem would be the police would not be able to use hollow points. The vest stops them. No, police are allowed to have bulletproof vests under the law. You and I can't. But the police are allowed to be able to do that. Dow mentions, can't buy a vest. Knowledge is power. Get it and build some on the sly. Well, it's not only a crime to buy a bulletproof vest under A352, it is illegal to own it. So if you are caught with a vest, such as, let's imagine, now put it in context of the laws that we know. If you happen to be a gun owner or someone thinks you're a gun owner and they have a red flag action against you, to be able to then allow the police or authorities to come into your home with SWAT teams to take all of your possessions, to take your children away from you, and they find that you have a bulletproof vest in that home, not only have you now been punished for no crime, you have committed a crime, and now they can punish you even more with a Class A misdemeanor or a Class E felony, depending on the case. Which means that you are now a criminal, and you started off because of someone's allegation. That allows them to come into your home, look at your property, determine that you have something that they don't want you to have, and that's also true with the New York Safe Act. You could have a firearm that New York State doesn't like. So either they find a firearm or they find a bulletproof vest, something for self-defense that's passive, that has never killed anyone in the world, and they will find that you are now a criminal, and now you're going to be hit with fines and possible jail because someone said, I don't like them. Because I think they're dangerous. Because God forbid, it's Mike, he listened to Mike Voss. He was listening to a conversation that was happening on the internet. That guy needs to go. He's dangerous. Have the police come to his home. That's the danger of it all. Mike Bowie says, if you take something by force or fraud, you need to use force to keep it. I understand the reasoning, but there is a problem with that, especially when we're talking about government. And that gets to the separation, as we've been talking about all day here. Cyrax mentions people are under mind control. I don't think they're under mind control, Cyrax. I think people have been acclimated. It's the boiling frog. You turn up the heat really low and just let it simmer. This is something that's been happening for decades. We have been changing people's minds and getting them to think about, I mean, you have today kids running around with T-shirts with Chairman Mao, Che Guevara, the communist flag, Lenin. They have no concept of the history because we stopped telling people about the history and the absolute death and torture that these people provided. The literally hundreds of millions of people who died in these countries combined that have been killed. That literally socialism and communism have killed more people on this planet than every other thing that has ever happened in the history of mankind. Literally, they have been responsible for killing more people than every other problem that has ever existed in the history of mankind. And they're running around with these T-shirts thinking it's great. That's because they don't understand. Because they're being told, don't listen, don't watch this kind of program, don't interact, just do what we say. Here's 30 seconds to tell you what's going on in the world, do what we say. And as long as we let people, as long as people do that and they don't have conversations, we will never be able to get away from that, which is part of the reason of the lockdown. Stop people from talking and have someone say, oh, well, you know, socialism is great. Really? Have you ever been there? Because I have. They don't want people to have that conversation. Agent Black mentions body armor is legal. Firearms and knives aren't. Yes, I do know that. There are firearm licenses for shotguns and small calibers. Hard to get one. They're looking to do that. That's H.R. 127 in the United States. That is being offered by Representative Jackson Lee. And I am waiting. And it is, by the way, folks, that was something that was suggested back on January 6th. It was introduced to Congress. And there is no description of this law at this time. We literally have a law, H.R. 127, that has been submitted. I know that it's about licensing ammunition and licensing guns and prosecuting people for their having the Second Amendment. And there is no text. You can't read the bill. That should scare people. And as soon as we do have the bill, I'm waiting for the wording so I can do my, I want to follow this and do a story on it. I can't until there's words. So that should terrify people. They're hiding it from us. Dow mentions, John Locke indicates that something can taken by force with no means of immediate legal social recourse. It is a state of war, and that's, well, yes, but we do have a legal recourse. We do have an alternative because we do have control of at least parts of the government, if not, but we are responsible for the whole government. So we do have a means, and I want to use that to its full extent because civil war is bad for everyone. Predictive programming. Well, that does exist. Greg mentions, which shows how stupid many people are. Ignorant. A lot of people are ignorant. Many people are willfully ignorant, which is stupidity, because they have the access to the knowledge but don't take it. That's true. But it's comforting because it feels comfortable to know that, oh, you know, I don't have to be responsible for what's happening. When we see that Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez is saying, I'm going to throw these people who are speaking up into a re-education camp, the majority of people go, oh, well, you know, it's not me. I'm okay. They're going to leave me alone, which is a false premise. And it doesn't understand the fact that there's still a consequence, that even though you're not paying attention, you're still going to suffer the consequences. Your rights are going to go away. And all with that, everything else that you know about life. Dow says, understood, it would be like the Scots hiding weapons in the thatch roofs and armor buried in oiled leather underneath doorways, trained with sticks and rocks until the opportunity to fight the English. Okay, that's probably something for Agent Black to discuss. Timmy mentions, wouldn't be surprised if they staged some more crap in D.C. soon so they can further justify this suggested bill. Actually, let me ask everyone, has anyone anyone heard from a credible, organized group on the right that they want to have violent protests. I haven't heard anything. I'm not even aware. They were talking about, oh, well, people are from the 16th until the 21st, people are going to be out on the streets. All the right are coming out and they're going to be, I'm like, I haven't heard anything. I haven't heard anyone say they want to do that. I haven't heard people saying they're going to be marching on DC. I haven't heard that. I heard people are saying they're upset and they don't agree and that they're not going to watch, Biden, who, by the way, is a coward. He's not even doing an inauguration. It's all virtual. It's going to be online. He needs 25,000 troops to protect him on a inauguration that's going to happen online. What a coward. But I've not heard anyone say that they want to go down and protest in D.C., that they want to march on the Capitol, that they want to march on the 50 states, the capitals of 50 states. Nobody has said that. And as far as I know, there isn't a single organization on the right, any of them, that is so organized that they can get protests in all 50 states. Now, if you ask me about Antifa, yes, they can. They have been organized for 5 years. They have been building up in all of these states. And we watched over this summer how Antifa has gone through Seattle, Portland, Austin, Colorado, New York City, Rochester. We've watched them go across the entire nation with their cells that they have been building for years. But I am not aware of any organization on the right that would do that. And if I did, I'd name them right now, but I don't know a single one. So I have no idea what they're talking about. Oh, we have to blockade DC because of the right. In my own city, Mayor Rich David, who happens to be a Republican, who I know, is talking about he is putting together precautions in case there is a riot from the right in Binghamton, New York, Southern Tier, New York. That is stupid. There is not a single group or agency in New York State that I am aware of, and definitely not in the Southern Tier, that plan to come to Binghamton, New York to have a violent protest. That is dumb. I don't even know of anyone who wants to have a protest in Binghamton. Where is this coming from? It's coming from a small group of people in Washington, D.C. that want to maintain power and are using the fear that happened in D.C., that emotional outburst we saw in D.C., and are using that to grab more power and to say, well, see, that happened, so it could happen again, so we need more power to stop that. Mind you, they didn't use any of that power or anything to try and stop people throughout the entire summer of 2020 all the way into the end of the year. They never once said, we need to stop Antifa. We need to stop Antifa burning down buildings. They never said that. But they definitely are saying, oh, well, we got to stop the right. Oh, yeah. Even though there's absolutely no word anywhere that this is going to happen and there is no organization to make that happen. Oh, but we have to organize across the entire nation because, they're evil. Really? So let me get back to some of the comments here. Dal says, I have heard that we should exhaust every peaceful legal means to combat the bad policies coming from leadership, which I agree with, and that's what I've been saying on this program. And I think we need to, make that happen. I agree with that. Mavis says, there's going to be a BLM protest for reparations in D.C. on the 21st at noon. You think they're going to have 25,000 National Guardsmen in Washington, D.C. for BLM as they protest that? Because reparations is stupid. Another thing that we shouldn't be doing. Cyrax, the people on the right are busy running the country by going to work to make a living. Yeah, most people on the right center of the nation, the middle class, they're too busy working to be bothered with trying to come together to argue about Joe Biden. They're going to try and go through the courts and our elected officials to try and make change, or in the case of New York State, to try and prevent stupid laws like A352. Timmy says, I've not heard any such talk. I don't know where the justification for all the National Guard is coming from. If Trump was being inaugurated again, oh boy, would there have been, if it was Trump, I'd agree. then we'd need it, because Antifa, which loves, and we have seen them, BLM, we have seen the violence that they're willing to commit. We've seen the lives that they have ended, the killed, the riots and the arson that they've done. Yeah, that I'm worried about. That I'm terrified about. You know what? That's the reason why no one was really worried about the DC. How many times did conservatives and Republicans and libertarians go down to Washington, D.C., and more than a few mainstream Democrats go down to D.C. to say, we don't agree? How many times did they do that? At least 3 or 4 times since the election, and no one got hurt. Nothing happened except for when Antifa got into fights with the Proud Boys. Those are the extremes. Throw them out. Mainstream people did not have a single problem. We left the places cleaner than when we found them, and there was no disruption. You can't say that from the left. And now suddenly the right, after all of the evidence that we can put out there, suddenly now the right is the danger. You're out of your mind. They're out of their mind. Greg says they get paid $15 an hour. Some of them do. Yes, that's true. Dow mentions more likely Antifa or BLM agitators from BU and BCC. There are, and we have seen, and it is a proven fact, there have been, we know that there were members of Antifa that were in the January 6th assault on the Capitol. And so we know that once you get a mob of people together and they're very angry and emotions are high, it doesn't take a whole lot to cause a riot. And BLM is very good at that. And they have done it in the past. And they did it in D.C. So, yeah, I'm more worried about them. And I wouldn't be surprised if members of BLM and Antifa would pretend to be conservatives to try and create this environment, to take advantage of it, so that Republicans in Congress will run like dogs with tails between their legs and bow down and submit and go, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry something happened. I can't block any of these laws. Go ahead and run ramshot against America, destroy our economy, destroy our right, the First Amendment, Second Amendment. Just do whatever you want, which really pisses me off. Greg mentions we need to stop for a year. You mean stop protesting? I don't think so. Agent Black mentions, who controls the DCNG? It's Trump fulfilling his promise to drain the swamp. He's exhausted all legal avenues. Pretty much, I would agree with that. And Dow mentions there is a sentiment, anecdotally, that if being on the right leads to being criminalized with attempts to come with force to communities for mass arrests, then portions of that community would defend it, as they should. As they should. Because that's how we saw that in, what is it, Kristallnacht or Reichstag in Germany. That's how it happened. Where people were being fed this thought that these are the bad guys, these are evil people, that they're not human, that they need to be treated differently, that we have to take them away and put them in camps. And Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez calls it a re-education camp. It's a camp. I don't care what the name of the camp is. It's a gulag. It's the same thing. And if we start seeing, and if we see this happen, we have to defend against that. I agree completely, because that is the beginning of the end. And if they dare to try and re-educate Americans, if they try to correct the thinking of Americans, if they try to punish Americans for having beliefs that aren't approved of, then we have a massive problem, because that's the end of America. Jason from Bing, hang on, I skipped a couple of people. Roy mentions DC looks like a high security prison now. Extract the 4 or 5 good politicians and the rest, well, I can dream can't die. Well, yeah, there's a lot of bad politicians in there. And we need term limits. These people, we have people who've been there for a lifetime. There are people who've been in Congress as long as I've been alive. Why? Because they're brilliant. If they were so brilliant, they would have achieved all their goals and been done long before the half-century mark. They're not good at what they're doing. Get rid of them. Get someone else in there. That's a problem. So Jason mentions the FBI states that they knew people were planning to raid and break into the Capitol. I believe the lack of security was intended, resulting in what we see today. Maybe expected on some people's parts, but I think largely it was a surprise because the right is not known for doing that. For decades, the right does not do that. So I think we could have seen leftward elements doing that, and they were probably the ones that were speaking about it. And again, once you get a mob going, the mob goes. Mind you, out of the hundreds of thousands of people that were in D.C., there were a couple hundred people in the Capitol. Tells you something about it. That's the difference between extreme, I don't even want to call them all extremists, but a more extreme emotion than the majority of people that were in D.C. Greg mentions, no, I mean, we need to stop working for a year. They carry out their leftist policies on the backs of the kids. That's true. And if we stopped working, the government would grind to a halt. Although Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez has mentioned in the past that she does want people to not work until they get $15 an hour across the entire country and join a union. She has said that. Dalgrim, which is stupid, which is just completely stupid. Dow mentions that I like the idea of no incumbency for the same position. You know, I just want to see people really, term limits, folks. If you can't get it done in 6 years, get out. You're not effective. And even if you did get it done in 6 years, get out. Let someone else get their shot. Agent Black mentions, in a lighter note, I haven't noticed any buffering today. I did. I definitely did. I saw somebody, I think it was coming from Twitter, but I'm not sure. Might have been Facebook. But yeah, I was seeing it. And they definitely were doing it. All right, folks. God, I love you all. Thank you for, especially with your patience with the battery thing, which I'm trying to get that fixed. I got to get some money together to get a dummy battery so I don't have to keep switching them like that. But I thank you for your patience, and I thank you for watching the program. And I hope that if you found any part of this to be useful, interesting, informative, support us. Subscribe if you haven't subscribed. Share it with other people. Give it a like. Let us use the algorithms that do exist to be able to reach more people, to share our voices, and whether they agree or not, to have a conversation, because that's how we improve America. That's truly how we make it better. It's not submission. It's not by separating, but it's by having conversations. And I do want to see that happen. And hopefully, with your help, we can get larger. We can reach more people. We can have those conversations and make America better. But we're not going to get that by saying, I submit. That's never going to be the answer. Timmy says government and diapers should be changed often. Oh, government and diapers should be changed often for the same reason. Yes. And I forget who made that quote. Was that Huckleberry Finn, that guy, which I can't think of his name right now. I think he was the one who made that. Mary says, how much do you need for a battery? Well, Mary, the batteries cost about like $80 for a correct one, 60 for a Chinese knockoff, something like that. CAG? K-A-G. That means something, doesn't it, Cyrex? I don't know what it is. But what I'm going to say is, I do appreciate every Sunday at 2:30 Eastern Standard Time speaking with everyone from overseas, like with Agent Black, some of the people in Germany, in Peru, Canada, Mexico. I do see all the different countries and people who speak with us here. I love you guys. Pakistan was a recent one. Someone sent me a message from. I do love talking with you all, to hearing, oh, keep America great. Thank you, Greg. I do enjoy having these conversations to share with you and to do the posts we do throughout the week to keep you up to date on some of the things that may not be the first thing you're going to hear in the news. Oh, Bubba says, second time I listened to you. Nice job, neighbor. Thank you, Bubba. We try. We try. And you're going to see all the links to everything that we got to and one or two things that I didn't get to speak about in the description. I actually was going to start off with 30 for today, but we whittled it down a bit. But I'm going to look forward to seeing you guys next week as I do some more stuff, especially on, again, HR 127. Horrible bill. Horrible bill. And I want to go over that as soon as possible. As soon as we need to see the text. And if they don't print it in this week, I'm going to be screaming about that. And I want you all to be safe. And I'm looking forward to seeing every single one of you next Sunday at 2:30 Eastern. And until then, be safe. Watch out on the 20th. Because, we don't need to see anything stupid happen in this nation. God bless you all. And I thank you. Have a good day.